Hellfire Campaigns, The Universe at Your Feet by Jim Webster. Our last Webster campaign kind of died with a whimper. I thought we were cruising, and then the auditors showed up and said, you're not paying your military nearly enough. And man, I kind of think I was, because as soon as I stopped, we got overrun. There's another campaign in here. It's more of a colonial era. It's written from a colonial era perspective. It's called The Man Who Would Be King. And reading through it, you think there's no way this can work. It's way too complicated. But we did great with Hellfire and the Fall of Empire. And that's a pretty complicated game too. Now this one is very much more of a grand political campaign with a little bit of army fighting on the side. There are a couple, it's like I said, it's kind of like Northwest Frontier. You are one of the grand poobahs. He used the term mogul, but I'm going to say poobah. You're one of his sub poobahs. You've got a little fiefdom of your own, and you have to worry about doing everything you can to stay in the good graces of the High King, except everything you do that's good, you get punished for. So it might be the most realistic game I've ever played. No good deed goes unpunished. And the better the servant you are for your leader, the more you will be hated by the kingdoms around you. So you've got a weird kind of tension going on in this game. And really, like so many of these complicated games, you can't know what it's like to play it until you actually get it on the table. So I thought that would be a lot of fun. And as is the case in most Jim Webster games, we will start out by creating a map. Now, he goes a little bit weird. He says, here's your terrain. And then here's the political setup. And then, by the way, here's what the terrain means like way later on. So it's a little complicated. Don't worry about it. We'll go through it step by step the way we always do. To get your terrain set up, you need two, count them, 1, 2 decks of cards. I lost another fight with my weed whacker. I need to do a Patreon. I need to do like maybe a Kickstarter, get John a decent weed whacker that will stop grinding his hands up like Blendo. I'm going to lay out a grid 9 by 9, and that's going to be our terrain. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. As you can see, I've used my fistful of lead. I've mixed up a couple of decks, Galactic Heroes, and nice solid shuffle between Galactic Heroes and Horse and Musket. As I deal these out, I'm going to explain to you what happens. The clubs are going to be impassable terrain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So I'm gonna tighten those up just a little bit more so we can see them all. Okay, so the clubs are mountain ranges. They may have a mine that will help us with generating income. Spades are rugged hills. You can get through them, but it's rough to get through. They generate cavalry troops. The diamonds are reasonable farmland. You get half the value of the card for population and tax revenue. And then the hearts, this is the choice and juicy farmland, and we're going to want a lot of that. So if I just start laying these out, and then it's kind of boring to watch a guy just deal out cards. So take a look. Take a look at what cards are here, and you'll know I'm being honest because I haven't changed any of these up top. I'm going to lay out all 99 of them. Or, I'm sorry, 81. 9 times 9, 81. And there you have it. A fine Northwest frontier ready to be explored. And if you squint your eyes, you can see that there's a good mix of black and red cards. The red are fertile. The black are not so much. As I look over here, I see club, 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 club. So we've got a little mountain range coming through with, again, another club diagonally up here. I'm not sure if you can move diagonally through the mountain ranges. Before we go any further, because this is like the mountainous northern portion of the Grand Empire, I have, 21 cards left over? So I'm going to start dropping some cards down here. This is the fertile portion. This is where the Grand Poobah lives. So I'm going to drop another couple of cards. And what that does is it means my bottom row is all really, it's very accessible. We can get down to where the capital city is. And as usual, the values of the cards will change how things work, and they will tell you how many villages, how many cities. Now, there aren't going to be any villages and cities in the clubs. And you can kind of look at this and say, is there any other mountain ranges that we see? So, for example, this mountain range here, I wish these were lined up a little bit better. These clubs right here, we've got 1, 2, 3, and then a fourth one right here. You can use these cards to tweak your terrain a little bit. We've got hills up here. Hills, see these hills? and then a little mountainous valley right there out there. So I can kind of take a look at these and go, where do I want this? Would I rather have a little fertile valley right here? I could put this right on this 6, and then we have, well, no, that wouldn't do it, right? I could put it right here on the 7 and kind of allow this to be a little fertile valley with the mountains right there. So you can kind of play with this and tweak it. And I could say, here's a little mountain. I really wish I had another club. Well, I get a 2, so we're going to make it a little more valuable down here. And I got another 6, so I can say, well, I don't want my king to have too much power, so maybe I drop that or I boost this one by just a little bit. I have hills, so maybe I decide that I want these hills to come a little bit further. And what will happen over time as you do this, so there's a mountain range up there. See these 3? What else do we got? We got another mountain range. I can cover this hill and just make, so this corner up here now, see that mountain? This gives us an example where, and Jim says you probably want to have about 6 cards per fiefdom. So we've got some not great, really good, not great. We've got some hills. So like this section here might be one kingdom, and that might be the kingdom I want because it'll limit the number of neighbors that I have. For me, I think what I'll do is take a look. I need to get this on the paper and start putting some lines down. But I think what I'm going to do is limit this to 6 fiefdoms altogether. I need to still look at how we're going to go about that. But, and just kind of take a look and see where the natural breaks are. I really wish I could do just like one more nice little mountain range. I've got the 3 of clubs here, and we can kind of connect maybe. So we got clubs, so that's 2, 4. 1, there's clubs down here, and that's 5. So do I 1, 2, 3, 4? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So I see. He's covering up because I changed it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then maybe there's another club. 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe there's another club right here. Maybe we'll cut that off. So what I need to do is transfer this to paper. And just in grid form for now, and then we can take a look and decide where we want these individual kingdoms to lie. Then we're going to roll to see what the leaders are like. Are they loyal to the Moghul? Are they schemers? Are they warlike? Are they a saint? And then we can start figuring out what the relationships are, and then we can start trying to figure out how we're playing court politics. Now, the part of the point of this game is that we're not playing court politics. We're up here in the Northwest frontier. Maybe we got a couple of diplomats down there arguing for us, but because our attention is focused up here on our neighbors, and we're trying to, we're their enemies at court, because we're trying to keep things safe and take care of our people, we're not paying as much attention to the court intrigue as we maybe should. But that's because we love our people. We're good leaders that way. This is what the map finally looks like when you realize that you only laid down 8 columns and you throw your last one in. See, I had to throw one more column in over here. At the end of the day, what we have here is a series of mountainous regions, right? We got nice little valleys, and it turns out you can't cross mountains that are diagonally linked. That gives us a valley up here, and there are some hilly areas to these valleys, and there are some fertile areas and some less fertile areas. The mountains, I didn't care about what number the card was. What I did care about is if it was a face card. So you can see here we have a queen, and that is, oh, geez, yeah, that's just a mountain right there. So this queen is a mine that is controlled by this nation over here. After laying out where all of the mountain and hilly areas were, I needed to figure out how big each of my fiefdoms was going to be. Fairly easy process. I said, I'm going to go with about 10 per, because we have a lot of mountains in here, listen, there's 80 cards, okay? And there's an even number of each of the suits. So that means we're going to have about 20 clubs, but we're going to lay out all 6 of the face cards, or 8, I should say, ace, king, queen, jack. So of that 20, 12 go bye-bye. That gives us about 79 plus or minus. So I've got 7 fiefdoms. They're all about 12, like these guys here. So if we take a look up here in this corner, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 in his case. And then down here, I saw this little mountain ridge right here has got 2 mines, and they're kings. So he's going to be pretty lucrative. So we're going to make that just an 8 square fiefdom. And likewise, 9 squares over here, but he's got a lot of really big, fertile areas. So I think he'll be okay. And likewise over here, this one has got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, but he's got the ace. So why are the face cards important? Well, there you get income and you get population. Now the mines don't have any population, but they do have income. The hearts over here have, let's see, so that's clubs. The rugged hills have a quarter the value for population and tax. The diamonds have half population and tax, and then you get full population. So basically for the hearts, you get one population, one tax for every suit. So this guy's going to be the 2, and I believe the aces are going to be worth 13. And the diamonds, of course, are half. Always round up. So this 9 of diamonds will be worth 5 tax, 5 population. So I can now put those numbers on the map here, and I can start figuring out what the personality is of each of my little fiefdoms. And once I see what they look like, I can go ahead and pick one for myself. I think I'm inclined, as I said, to kind of go up here in the corner of the map. I know the boundaries aren't really all that accurate right now. I went a little too heavy on the green. So let me try and throw down. How about orange? Will orange look a little better? This here is one of our fiefdoms, like so. So pretty big one there. He's got 10. And then there's one over here, and we don't worry about the mountains, but he does have access to a nice little mine down there. This might be the winner right here. It's a little snake-like, but, you know, we can go with it. If you want to go with a nice, tight, compact, you can get your armies where they need to go. This one, and then I was going to make this 10, and I thought, no, we got to go 8. I can't go just 7. Although with all those face cards, he might be doing just fine. So a couple of, square blocky nations down here. And then up here, we've got some little snaky ones. And like I said, there's kind of where the dividing line is, like so. I numbered them as shown, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And if you add them up, what you find is that number 1 has a income of 52 and a population of 40. Now, the population and income are largely the same, except that they've got this mine, which doesn't contribute population, but it does contribute income. You may want to go to war. This may be a really good kingdom to run because that mine is fairly well protected. I wonder if there's a mountain pass. We should probably draw this mountain range coming something like this, because this mine is clearly over on these guys' side. And so that's why you always have a slightly higher income, except in kingdoms like this, where there's no mines. There are, you will notice, 3 large population centers. So nation number 4, income of 55, population of 55. Contrast that with the neighbor right next door, which has an income of 30 and a population of 56. Excuse me, I got those numbers wrong, didn't I? It's actually a population of 30 and an income of 56, because they've got these 2 kings that add an additional 26 to their income. Likewise, this smaller kingdom, it's all hearts. Now, bear in mind, it may look like a really wealthy area, but they are extremely vulnerable, because when it comes time to figure out what your standing army looks like, hills contribute one kind of force, and I think that's cavalry, and then the diamonds contribute infantry. So even though these guys are extremely wealthy, they don't have the horsepower that they need to go to war. We'll go into that in a little more detail later. The other thing is the actual number of conurbations that you have here. The spades cards, that's the hills. I didn't draw a spade because it takes a long time. So wherever you see hills, the number is the number of villages. So the king here actually has 12 little villages in here. The jack has, 13. The jack has 11. The queen of hills has a dozen, and then the 5 has 5 little villages. For the diamonds, the number gives the... Oh, except one last thing. Where you see a face card, you have a walled town as well. So we have a couple of walled towns and a whole bunch of villages right here. For diamonds, the number gives you the number of villages. So here's an 8 of diamonds. There are 8 villages in there. And again, if you have a court card, so this little king of diamonds is going to have the 13 villages, one of which will be a walled town. And then with hearts, a third of these villages, again, 8 villages, but where you see, but in each case, all of these villages are large enough to be a walled town, and then a third of them are walled towns. A court card means a city, right? So a lot of walled towns, very defensively minded down here. Maybe that's why they don't have a whole lot of cavalry down there because they spend all their time hunkered down behind those big walls. A lot of information contained here. I'm going to need to figure out a way to present it all in a way that makes sense while stripping off all of the court cards. We'll leave those kind of in the background, but my final map might wind up looking very different from this. Jim doesn't tell us how big each of these cards are, but I think you can kind of tell that where there's hearts, it's very fertile ground, and the villages will be closer together. Out here in the hills, I've only got 4 here. Very unproductive land compared to right next door. The ace means lots of villages. The 4 means there's just not a whole lot of villages there because it's just a little too rugged, a little too barren. Maybe there's some desert through there. Maybe that's what these cities back here, well, not cities, right? Remember, hearts give you villages, and a third of them are walled towns, right? So we got 12 walled towns up here. And that's going to be important when we actually do march to war later as well. It takes a little bit of fishing through the text, but what you find is that for every hill that you have, you add up the points of the hills, and you get 1 company of infantry for every point. But for every 3rd infantry, turn that one into a cavalry. Okay? For the red cards, you get 1 cavalry for every card that is a 7 through king. You get 2 cavalry for every ace. So we can take a look here at this guy down here, nation number 4. You can see that they've got a couple of spades. So there's 5, 6, 7. So they're not going to start off with a very big army at all, right? They have 7. So that means they have 7 units, of which 5 will be infantry, 2 will be cavalry. And there's a difference between the lowland cavalry and the upland cavalry. The lowland cavalry are irregular. It says they're armed with giselles, matchlocks, swords, pistols, shields. Okay. And then the cavalry from the hills, that's the infantry, the cavalry from the hills. The lowland cavalry are armed with a mixture of weapons. So they all carry a lance, sword, and shield. So basically, I think what we do is we call the lowland cavalry heavy cavalry and the hills light cavalry. After running the numbers, what you find is our wealthy, very fertile lowland down here, right by the Moghul's depot, which is somewhere right about here. And you'll understand why that location is important. The empire stretches to the north, south, east, and west. We're just the northern province of the empire, okay? These guys, they don't have any people. They don't have any hills, so they have no infantry, no light cavalry, but they do have 5 heavy cavalry. See, there's 1, 2, 3, 4... 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I guess they only have... Oh, and then the 8 is the 5th. So 5 heavy cavalry. Each of these cards provides 1. They're going to have to invest heavily in mercenaries. Fortunately, they've got a massive income. 78. They are the wealthy guys. Their sons are decadent, and they don't want to march to war. They're going to have to pay to raise troops. Compare that to these guys right here, number 6. That's right. Wait. That is number 6. Compare that to number, let's say, 1 up here. Income of 52, population 40. They've got 22 infantry, 10 light cavalry, and 3 heavy cavalry. So a lot of different guys doing different things. Now, the rules do have elephants. If you really do a good job for the Grand Poobah, he will gift you with an elephant and the handlers, and that leads to some interesting things. But already you can kind of see that each of these countries is developing some kind of personality. There's one more thing I want to do before we close up shop. And that's, first of all, we need to pick which one of these groups we want to be a part of. And the first thing I'll say is, I don't want to have to deal with mercenaries. So I'm going to eliminate this one right away. And I don't want to be, so that's number 6. And the number 7 is fairly wealthy, but they're people poor. They don't have very big armies. And then number 4, we're just going to throw that right out the window. Number 4 has a pretty good population and income, but man, they just have no real army to speak of. So I'm inclined to go ahead and stick with number 3 up here. The only problem 3 has is that their mine is right here. It's very vulnerable to all of their neighbors. But that might not mean a whole lot because our neighbors might be afraid of us. They might be paying us protection money, and that may be what happens down here. How do we know what they're doing? Well, we're going to roll 2d6 and we're going to take a look at a little chart, and we're going to find out from that what their policy is vis-a-vis their neighbors. Like what is the guy running the joint like? Before I do that though, I have to pick one of these for myself. And I think the smart play might be this one here. It's got reasonable income. It's got a reasonable military, and we can bump some more up. So I don't know. I think either here or here is the way to go. Very vulnerable. Maybe even down here. I'm really tempted. Why don't we go ahead and we could let the dice decide, right? That's always fun. I think I could have fun with any one of these four. I don't like down here at all. So let's do that. With those four, I'm going to roll a die, and we're going to let Mr. Bones pick. I'm going to roll a d8, and it's going to be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to be this center valley right up here. We've got 2 real neighbors. Call it 3 neighbors that we're going to have to worry about. But nation number 2, this is going to be us. Small population, one of the smaller populations, maybe somewhere in the middle of the pack, kind of on the light side. Now I take it back, kind of light on the income, but then like it says down here, we've got a reasonable military. So that is what our kingdom is like. As I said, the last thing we have to do is figure out the politics. And I told you at the start of the video that this game is more of a political game. I haven't even told you about the most important thing yet, because we're just laying the groundwork. We'll get into how the internal politics of our fiefdom works, as well as the external politics between the fiefdoms. But I want to go through the external politics first. We're going to establish what our 6 nearest neighbors are like. And there's a nice little table here. I got to roll 2d6. That gives me 11 possibilities for each, with the result of a 7. And if Jim is any kind of game designer, he knows. The fief holder is a hereditary incumbent. He is warlike and keen to dominate his neighbors. So we're living right next door to that guy. That's not great. For the next one, a 6, he is unwarlike and corrupt. He pays protection to 2 neighbors and hopes to play one off the other. For number 4, I get an 8. He is a hereditary incumbent, intent on enjoying the prerequisites of his position. He's all about the perks, man. He is warlike and happy to extort protection money from his neighbors. And then number 5 is going to get a result of a 4, which is a hereditary incumbent, intent on enjoying the perks of his position, unwarlike, and he pays protection to a neighbor. So we're seeing that some of these guys collect and some of these guys pay, and we can figure that out once we look at everybody's position. The fief holder for number 6, that's this wealthy one right down here, is high in the councils of the Grand Moghul and spends most of his time at court. The fief is run by a vizier, and any interference will bring the wrath of the owner and the power of the Grand Moghul onto your head. And then for number 7, that's this long snaky one down here, we get a 7. So once again, a hereditary incumbent, warlike, and keen to dominate his neighbors. Bear in mind, thanks to the bell curve of a standard 2d6, there are some really crazy results here. If I had rolled a 12, he is the minor son of the Grand Moghul, which has very important ramifications for the campaign. So now I'm going to stop the video again and kind of look at who's doing what to whom, and I have to decide what I want to do. This is the plotting table. This is the plotting table. So you take a look, remember what it said at the beginning, we have one fief that's effectively run by the Grand Moghul. We don't have any saints. We do have some hereditary and unwarlike, some hereditary and warlike. And what you do is you cross-reference the kind of ruler. So what does G think of G? Well, we've got WS, and that's the one I don't remember what it is. But you can see here that B, if you have a saint, he's got peaceful intentions to everybody. I don't have a lot of those. Instead, I have a lot of F. And I have a lot of F's going up against F. And the W's mean war. So E's and F's really want to go to war with E, F, and G. Now, I've got basically 3 of those. So when you take a look at, after you do all the cross-referencing, you find a table that looks a little something like this. And of course, I don't have to do this for myself because I get to decide what my policy is. But as you can see, nation number 1 wants to go to war. I mean, really, okay, so now that I look at this again, remember I told you these games are so complicated, you really only learn how to do it by playing. Obviously, this row right here, you don't have a policy towards yourself. So we can kind of block those out. I don't know why I wrote that down. I just was being silly, I guess. But you can see that number 1, the guy up in the far northwest corner, he wants to go to war with number 4 and number 7. And that means, so this guy up here is not happy at number 4 and number 7, and conveniently enough, those guys are way far across the map. So I don't know what that means. Maybe he wants to march through my territory, and maybe he's willing to pay me tribute to do so. I'm not sure. But let's take a look at some of these other ones. The fiefdom that is run by the Grand Poobah, that's number 6. That is this one right here. The really wealthy city-based one is effectively run by the Moghul, and he is very nervous about nations 1, 3, 4, and 7. And we'll put some names on these later. So he's nervous, and he may be willing to just pay protection money to 1. What did we say? 1, 3, 4, and 7. He may pay protection money to 1, 3, 4, and 7. How does he feel about his immediate neighbor, number 6? Well, that is, so this is number, oh, wait, he is number 6, isn't he? Yeah, how does he feel about his immediate neighbor, number 5? So 6 versus 5. He is at peace. Yeah, so he's at peace with this. That makes sense. These guys maybe have a nice little alliance. But what does 5 think about 6? 5 thinks about 6. He's a little nervous about 6. So he may be paying tribute to 6. So this is kind of a block, and they may be pinning this guy in until we throw our lot in and start really messing things up. So that's how the political situation maintains. And I didn't see, I guess, nervous. I need to figure out who's paying tribute to whom. I need to figure out what the war fitting looks like. And then the real meat of the game consists of 2 different things. You have a budget, and you have to balance 3 factors. You have to balance money spent on munificence, taking care of your people so they don't revolt. If you don't take good care of them, that could be a problem. Magnificence, hey, it's no good being the king if you don't live in a palace. You need to show people that you're the boss, that you have the deepest pockets, and that they want to be your friend if they want to take advantage of that moolah. You got to spend money on magnificence, not too much. And of course, you need to pay money to the Moghul, 20% tax rate. So those are the 3 things that you have to balance. And you have to balance those because every year we're going to draw a card from a normal deck of cards. And it's going to tell us what is going on this year. And that's really going to intersect in this in some surprising ways. So you got to do some political stuff. Like I said, you draw a card for political randomness, and there's a chance that there's a famine, and you better have some reserves, because if you don't, some reserve cash on hand, because if you do, you can pay for extra bread. You can import extra food so your people don't starve. If you do that, you'll have an easier time of things. If you don't, there's a chance they rebel, and you're going to have to put down a rebellion, which is pretty bad if you've prepared to attack one of your neighbors. There are a couple of other things you can do. Some of the other things that happen is if you draw a hearts, the Grand Moghul comes out. I explain. Remember when I said that you are trying to do the Moghul's bidding to stay in his good graces? You will inevitably fail, and you will gain a stain at court. And I'm going to keep track of stain for all 7 of our countries. And when the Moghul turns his attention to the northern area, he basically sends an army. Well, he tells you, you're going to help me with my army. Put down, whoever has the highest stain is going to suffer an attack by the Moghul. And you can help the Moghul, and then some of your stains may go bye-bye. There's a possibility that there's a coup down in the palace. Maybe there's a civil war going on off screen, and you have to decide which side you're going to pay. You can pay them both, and then half of your stains go bye-bye. Or you can pick one. Say, you know what? I'm going to throw my full support. I'm going to pay a whole bunch of money to this guy. Flip a coin. If he wins, all your stain goes away. But if you pick back the wrong horse, you get an additional D6. So the next time the Moghul, so the new Moghul, it turns his attention to the north, there's a very good chance he's going to summon an army to beat you. Now, that may not be a bad thing. If you've got enough money, if you take enough territory from your neighbors, if you're ready to march to war and you think you can beat the Moghul's force, then you play that battle out. And if you win, you are the new Moghul. And you leave this podunk hinterland way up here in the north, and you move into the Great Grand Palace down here in the south. And now you get to have to balance all of the rest of the, and the rest of the kingdoms. You know, this could be very Byzantine. Like literally, you could just decide that the Grand Palace here is Byzantium, and you're over here off somewhere in the Anatolian Peninsula, or you know, somewhere in the Greek Peninsula, and you guys are all vying for the favor of the Emperor of the East. You could reskin this. A friend is going to do this for chainmail battles. Again, I don't know that we're going to do a whole lot of actual tabletop battles with this, and I don't know what the actual theme is going to be, but so far we have a rather interesting little map with 7 heads of state all vying against each other. It's going to be plenty of backstabbing, very diplomatic, almost like this game is an extension, a hyper-realistic and hyper-detailed version of a little game called Diplomacy. Wouldn't be the first time we played a game like that. Probably won't be the last. Good Lord willing, and we're still around to do it. Hey, what a great time working our way through a really complex system. I still don't understand how everything intersects. We need to do that via practice, and so we will be fleshing these out a little more, giving them some names, giving them a little bit of personality. And oh, by the way, one of the events is one of these kingdoms here, the ruler could die. He could suffer a palace coup, and that's going to change his status. Instead of being very peaceful, maybe a warlike guy takes over. So we can't get too comfortable with the current situation because it is a literal, is figurative, actual house of cards that with the slightest wind is just going to fall down and we have to recalibrate, and it's going to keep the campaign fresh. And I don't know, maybe we'll get through another 12, 15 episodes. I hope you don't mind these little pen and paper games, these little war games, these diplomatic games. I find them a lot of fun, and I have a lot of fun playing them with you over my shoulder. Until next time, I'm praying for you.